Coming up, the Predators get a shootout win over the Kraken and more injury news for the Golden Knights. This is Locked On Game to Game, NHL.
Every game, every team, every angle. Locked On Game to Game, your team every day.
Welcome in. You're listening to Locked On Game to Game NHL. Local experts join us to go over the biggest stories on the ice. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you so much for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. It was the same old story in Boston yesterday. David Pastrnak scored a goal, and the Bruins won. Locked On Bruins is in for more on how the Black and Gold got it done against the Canadiens.
David Pastrnak has a new career high in goals, and the Bruins have won 5 in a row following a 4-2 win over the Montreal Canadiens at home on Thursday evening. This is Ian McLaren, host of Locked On Boston Bruins, and it was Tyler Bertuzzi who got things going with his first goal as a member of the Boston Bruins. Jake DeBrincat scored an absolute beauty, splitting the Montreal defenseman, even causing them to collide, beating Jake Allen. And then Pastrnak scored his career-high 49th goal of the season, with David Krejci adding some insurance. It was a very rough game. AJ Greer was given a 5-minute major and a game misconduct for cross-checking. Could be a suspension on the way. For all the latest on the Black and Gold, keep it locked to Locked On Boston Bruins.
UC Saros once again doing his brick wall impression last night in the shootout win over Seattle. Locked On Predators talks about that victory and all good things for Nashville.
Well, somehow, some way, the Nashville Predators still alive in the playoff chase after tonight's 2-1 win over the Seattle Kraken. Nick Morgan here from the Locked On Predators podcast. Remember at the trade deadline when the Preds traded away pretty much half of the team and the other half of the team was on injured reserve? Yeah, since that time, the Preds are 7-3-2. Who would have thought? And we saw two of the biggest reasons why the Predators are on that run tonight against Seattle. One of it, UC Saros, 26 saves. That man cannot be stopped when he gets on a roll, stonewalling a lot of good Seattle Kraken chances. And the other part of the equation, new faces stepping up for the Nashville Predators. You had Kiefer Sherwood with a goal tonight. You had Tommy Novak with another assist. He now has 33 points in 39 games this season. That's about a 70-point season on a 82-game pace. And of course, Phil Tomasino, one of the newest Preds, stepping up and getting the shootout winner. Preds have a lot of things going for them. Who knows if it's actually going to end it with a playoff run or not, but for now, it is fun to see this wacky young team starting to win games.
Vegas got 2 points with a win over Calgary, but some injury issues could be the bigger story from last night. Locked On Golden Knights fills us in.
Good evening. The Golden Knights win 3-2 against the Flames. Chris Golick, Locked On Vegas Golden Knights here. That's the good news. After last week's thumping that the Flames gave the Golden Knights, the Golden Knights were able to go back and return the favor, earning a tough 2 points. Good news, Nick Waugh gets the game winner in his first game back from a long injury. The bad news, Riley Smith goes down, gets hit hard into the boards, did not return. We'll see what happens there. The worst news, Logan Thompson could not finish the game. Looked like he re-aggravated his lower body injury. So he had some collateral damage, folks, but 2 points is 2 points. Let's see what coach says after the game. Maybe we'll get some good news. For everything Vegas Golden Knights hockey, please check out the Locked On Vegas Golden Knights podcast. Your team every day.
A flat start for Minnesota and some other issues cost them a shootout loss to Philly last night. Locked On Wild recaps those problems, and Locked On Flyers goes over the win.
If not for the continued Matt Boldy heater, how bad of a game would this have been for the Wild? Hey everybody, Seth Topal, host of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, recapping a 5-4 shootout loss for the Wild to the Philadelphia Flyers here tonight. Wild did not have it. From the get-go, Philadelphia was physical, they were faster, they were getting to pucks quicker than the Wild were, and as a result, they took a 1-0 lead. The Wild, however, did answer back and had a 4-3 lead going into the third period after a Matt Boldy goal, his second, an insane goal, by the way, with his back turned through the legs, and then Philadelphia ties it up under a minute later. No score in overtime and no score in the shootout for the Wild, who drop an ugly one and only get 1 point against the Flyers. For more on the Minnesota Wild, make sure you're following Locked On Wild wherever you listen to your podcasts.
This game had a more balanced production between vets and the younger guys as the Flyers win in a shootout. Hi, this is Rachel Donner with your quick reaction to the Flyers 5-4 shootout win versus the Minnesota Wild. Joel Farabee and Tyson Foerster continued their strong performances, both extending streaks. Farabee, especially with his fourth game in a row with a goal. Thought the Flyers handled the Wild pretty well and managed to break through their defense effectively for large swaths of the game. They had a significant majority of high danger chances, except in that overtime where they once again used that 1 forward 2 D-man structure, which is interesting. In the end, Carter Hart came through with big saves and stops in the shootout to win this one. For more on this game and the Flyers all season long, tune in to the Locked On Flyers podcast anywhere you get your podcasts.
Coming up, the Canucks light up James Reimer. This is Locked On Game to Game NHL. Today's edition of Locked On Game to Game is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. You should go and download the app because new customers get that no-sweat first bet of up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. So just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It is safe, secure, super easy for you to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scorers to threes that are drained in a basketball game. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Welcome back. You're listening to Locked On Game to Game NHL. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you again for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. Detroit dropped one to the Blues yesterday, 4-3. Locked On Red Wings trying to look for some positives in the loss.
The Detroit Red Wings lose the second half of the home and home against the St. Louis Blues 4-3. They tried to battle back, but ultimately could not. But prior to that, Scotty, they blew a 2-0 lead. So it was a bit of a mixed bag out of the Detroit Red Wings in this one.
Yeah, it was I thought it was a relatively even played game, like as far as opportunities on both sides went. But goaltending, I'm sure we'll talk about that a lot on the show. Two different goalies for the Red Wings in this one. Blown leads are never fun, but Edvinson's obviously a story to keep watching. He played in this game. There was a fight, which is always something fun to talk about. Wallman, really nice shot there, the second goal of the game. But a little bit of too little too late for the Wings.
Yeah, so best thing to come out of this one, Simon Edvinsson, first career goal. And of course, we'll probably focus on that on Friday's episode of Locked On Red Wings.
Dallas did just enough to get by the Penguins on Thursday. Locked On Stars has that full breakdown for you.
The Dallas Stars take down the Pittsburgh Penguins in dramatic fashion at home to maintain first place in the Central Division. Hey, everybody, this is Dane Lewis with the Locked On Stars podcast, and this was an intense game. Had a little bit of a playoff feel to it. Sidney Crosby doing his thing with the Pittsburgh Penguins, but ultimately the Penguins offense comes just short as they're unable to get multiple shots past Jake Oettinger, who saves 40 of 42 shots. The Stars hold on to win 3-2, getting 2 points at home, a very crucial spot, and the Stars having their best players step up in the late stages of the game. The game deadlocked at 1 goal apiece in the third period, and the Stars get quick bang-bang goals from Joe Pavelski and Jamie Benn. The veterans on the team continuing to step up and come up big for this team in the clutch when it matters most. And honestly, the biggest story for me in this game is the performance of Jake Oettinger, who has come under a little bit of criticism as of late with his numbers not being as flashy as they were at certain points in the year. He's put a lot of that responsibility on himself. He's been incredibly hard on himself, and he comes out in this game and saves 40 shots, helping his team get a huge win as the race for the Central Division continues to heat up with the Stars, Wild, and Avalanche. But we're going to be talking about this game in its entirety on Friday's episode of Locked On Stars. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
James Reimer awful in net last night as Vancouver took advantage by scoring a whole lot of goals. Locked On Canucks and Locked On Sharks join us with more.
Thank you, James Reimer. It was one of the biggest wins for the Canucks this season, a 7-2 thumping of the San Jose Sharks. I'm Trevor Beggs, host of Locked On Canucks. And the Canucks didn't get many shots tonight. I believe it was 20 or 21 shots, but 7 of them went past James Reimer. Dakota Joshua hit 10 goals on the season. Phil DiGiuseppe with a couple points on the board. Sheldon Dry scored a shorthanded marker. There were goals aplenty in this one. But the big story from a Canucks perspective, color commentator John Garrett announced his retirement on the air. Kyle Bowen and myself will touch on that tomorrow. John Garrett, forever in our hearts, always a legend. We'll talk about him and some of the other storylines around the Canucks on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Canucks.
The Sharks get absolutely dominated by the Vancouver Canucks. I'm Jane Young of Locked On Sharks. The Sharks lose 7-2 in an absolute beatdown by Vancouver. Vancouver scored 7 goals on 21 shots. Not a big math guy, but that is 1 out of 3 shots. 33% shooting percentage for the Canucks tonight. Sharks power play looked disjointed. They gave up a shorthanded goal and just not much to build up tonight. Plenty of back-breaking mistakes from the Sharks as they continue to hurdle towards a potential top pick in the NHL draft. And this team deserves to be a top pick because they are one of the worst teams I have ever watched in my life. So we'll have a full breakdown of tonight's game and talk about the draft on your next episode of Locked On Sharks, we can find on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts.
A game against Chicago is just what a slumping team needs to get back on track. Washington, the latest example of that. Locked On Capitals and Locked On Blackhawks go over everything for us post-game.
Caps take down the Blackhawks by a score of 6-1. Hi, this is Dan Holme of Locked On Capitals. Well, this game tonight was exactly what the doctor ordered. This team has struggled as of late, so for them to be able to pick up a big win against the Blackhawks was just a real big boost for their morale. We know that they lost 3 games against St. Louis, Minnesota, and the Columbus Blue Jackets, so for me, I was thinking to myself, I sure hope they can find a way to win tonight, but the biggest thing for me was the return of John Carlson. He has totally stabilized that back end, a great two-way defenseman, and he just really stepped up. John Carlson had a goal and an assist in his return from a fractured skull. With a 6-1 victory over Chicago tonight, the Caps have now earned at least 1 point in 11 games against the Blackhawks, who are 9-0-2, dating back to January 10th, 2006. Over their last 5 games, the Caps have converted on 7 of 16 power play opportunities. So everything was just humming along, and they got production up and down the lineup. They also got a really great performance out there from Darcy Kemper as he stopped 27 shots in his return from an upper body injury. The Caps hope to stay in the win column as they take on the Penguins next this weekend. I'll have more on this for you tomorrow on Locked On Capitals, your team every day.
The Chicago Blackhawks fall 6-1 to the Washington Capitals as they've now been outscored 15-3 over their last 3 games. What's up, everyone? This is Jack Bushman. Tonight, the Chicago Blackhawks were on the wrong end of a lopsided outcome, once again falling 6-1 to the Capitals, and it all went bad right from the get-go. Anton Khudobin not only made his first start with the Blackhawks, but it was also his first NHL start of the season. Didn't go very well for him. He gifted Connor Sheary an early goal, went on to stop just 22 of the 28 shots that he faced. And on the other end, the Blackhawks offense really couldn't muster up any high danger opportunities. Not the worst thing in the world in terms of the tank standings, losing once again, but they do get blown out for the second consecutive game, falling 6-1 to the Capitals. For more coverage on this game, be sure to go and check out tomorrow's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's a wrap for this edition of Locked On Game to Game NHL. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On NHL and your favorite team's Locked On podcast here on YouTube and wherever else you get your podcasts from. I'm Kainani Stevens. This has been Locked On Game to Game.